Hello, hello, and welcome to the Love Lindsay podcast. I'm your host, Lindsay Wheeler. A military wife and mom who's built 2 successful businesses and launched a charity to give back to military families. We are grateful for where we are today, but the road to get here has not always been easy. My hope is that this show will be a chance to pay forward some of the lessons that I've learned to help others, and also to learn right along with you by creating conversations with people who inspire me so that we can all show up a little bit better tomorrow than we did today. Thanks for being here. Enjoy the show. Friends, get your pens and pads out because I have no doubt you are going to be taking some serious notes today. I could not be more excited to have my friend and mentor on the show today, Mr. Art McCracken. He has taught me so much about leadership, life, mindset, motivation, and I know that you are going to take away so many nuggets from our conversation today. So friend, thank you so much for your time and for being on the podcast today.
Thank you, Lindsay. It's an honor and pleasure to be here. I appreciate your kind words.
Well, you guys, for those of you that don't know Art, I love that he says his calling is people experiencing living true. I think that is so powerful. Art, kind of walk us through, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, my calling is people experience living true, just like you said. What it means for me, it really comes from a place of reflection in my own life. And I had a conversation this morning with some friends about story and how we create our story and where our story generates from. And for me, it's going back into my life and looking at the times that were most difficult, where I felt like I couldn't do life on my own. And looking at all of the circumstances around those moments, and then also picking another time in life when maybe I was most happy and most fulfilled and felt most alive and energized and aligned with who I felt I am, who I'm designed to be. And when I marry those two things, and as I look back in my life, the thing that was most meaningful in those times is a high level of vulnerability, a high level of risk in relationship, a high level of risk in laying down an old way of being, bad habits, areas of hypocrisy in my life, areas of duality, and really coming to grips and terms with the person who I am or who I am at any given moment, and the challenges that I have and the things that I'm trying to solve for, and not hiding behind that. And so for me, living true is showing up as one person, showing up as a person that is engaged, not hiding, not looking over the shoulder, not wondering what other people are going to think or say, but just living the truths that are becoming evident and manifesting themselves in my life. So for me, my hope, I enjoy living true. It's something that's been highly impactful in my life, but when it translates to calling, my hope is just that people experience that. And if what I do day in and day out, my calling translates into a way of being in my life, that it's not a separation of work and home and play and community, but it really becomes a way of being in a way that I exist in my life and in the lives of those around me. And so as I live my best, I hope that others will find that and experience that for themselves. And in all that I do, if it will help lend itself to an example of that, or somebody experiencing that even in that moment, then I'm happy. I find fulfillment in that. And so that's where it comes from.
Oh, I love that. I think it's such a great perspective of looking at not only the challenges, but the successes, the peaks and the valleys in your life, and finding a way to navigate that. Personal development obviously is something that you are very passionate in your own life, but also something that you've helped so many others find. I know me personally, we've had many conversations about growth and personal development and how that is a lifetime journey. Where do you think, or kind of pinpointing, where did that passion for you start, and what has that journey looked like for you?
The passion for personal development, I don't know that I could ever maybe pin it to one specific place and time, but it comes from all the mess ups in life and the times where you didn't honor your best self, and you take a moment, and you're going to have things that will show up as an immediate impact of bad choices. You'll have other things that don't create an impact, but you have an awareness that that wasn't your best. And so for me, it's probably just honoring that notion and that premonition that, you know what, Art, you didn't do your best, and you didn't show up in a good way, and the interaction that you had with somebody else probably isn't representative of who you could have been. And so for me, it's experiencing enough pain and regret and challenge in those moments. And it's tough when you talk about regret, because it's really not, as you learn to look back at things, you actually see that there was a gift in that. But it's in those moments where you can do better, but you're committed to figuring that out and asking yourself the tough questions and going into the difficult spaces that have become a practice that actually gives me more life. And so I think this just life in general, understanding that it can be better every day. So I'm going to learn from others. I want to learn from somebody else's mistakes, somebody else's experiences, somebody else's insight, because when I have insight that makes sense for me, I want to share it with somebody else because it impacted me. And so it's really just immersing myself in a community, in a space where I feel like I can learn something to help me get a better result.
We had talked a lot about it being this like lifelong journey, that if you're always in that mindset of growing, that has really given me great perspective to realize that this isn't like, oh, well, I read this book or I figure out, or these strategies, or I get a really great routine down or a morning habit. It really is a lifelong journey. How has that helped you to realize that this is something that you're committed to every day and that it's always going to be evolving?
Well, I think the concept of a lifelong journey, we're on the journey whether we want to be on the journey or not. I think the quest for lifelong growth is a choice. And I love Carol Dweck, Dr. Carol Dweck's book on mindset, where she talks about the two different kinds of mindset, fixed mindset and growth mindset. And I think we've got to figure out, are we oriented? Are we in a place where we're willing to choose growth, which means there's going to be some uncertainties, which means I'm going to have to evaluate where I am today and decide where I want to be tomorrow, and then make choices around that on whether I'm going to engage in the things that will take me out of my comfort zone, the things that might challenge my habits, the things that might challenge my paradigm, and even the biases that I might have developed, in hopes that I'll come out the other side a better person. And so that growth orientation is a mindset. The opposite of that is a fixed mindset. And that would just be to say, I am who I am. I'm not going to change. I'm not interested in change. And if you don't like that, deal with it, because that's who I am. And so it becomes more of a self-serving, it actually becomes an excuse for existence in a space where you're not willing to choose something different. And so when I look at that and how it translates into this, I just believe that it's a choice, that if it's a lifelong pursuit, you're going to be faced with thousands of choices every day, and recognizing that it is a journey. It's a journey of imperfection, that we're imperfect human beings having a very mortal, imperfect experience. And so if you can have some grace with that and understand that part of that journey, part of the requisite for that journey is that we actually develop our skills, our attributes, that we honor the gifts that we've been given in the service of others, and that we just not make it about ourselves. And so again, it's a choice. If the choice is to grow and the choice is to become better, then a commitment to that through life is also a choice. And when we waver from that commitment, and we'll have moments where we push pause on the growth button because it's easier and it doesn't hurt as much and it doesn't create us concern and put us in places of risk. So recognizing that too will happen, and almost preloading what we might do in those moments or how we might come out of that. Again, what does it mean for our life, and how does it impact not only ourselves, but how does it impact the people around us?
I think anybody listening can sit just for a second and recognize when they've had that sort of fixed mindset, or people in their life that have had that. And it usually doesn't correlate with someone who's very happy in life, does it?
No, it doesn't. What I typically see, and I've been this way in my own life, when I get fixed, relationships around me are usually stressed. I'm writing stories that are not stories that create openings for future growth and development, or future action, even future solution. I've created these blanket statements that are part of my story, very much in a place of victimhood, where everything's happening to me. Ego is at a peak where I believe that I'm better than or less than someone else. But when you peel all that back, it's just in a place that you've decided that today I'm going to make an excuse as to why I don't want to grow. I'm going to make an excuse as to why I want to stay where I'm at. So
I'm sure there's a lot of folks, listening that are thinking like, oh gosh, I want to be on this path, but doubting, do I have what it takes? Can I do this? That sort of imposter syndrome feeling of, do I belong here? Is this something that I can do? You've worked with so many people, from people just starting out on the path to a goal or in business, all the way up to corporate executives of huge businesses. I wonder do you see a lot of similarities in people, in the things that they struggle with, regardless of where they're at on the journey, that sort of makes us all similar, I guess, more similar than we are different?
Yeah, I do. I think some of the similarities that I see is that people have a concern around how others view them, have a concern about maybe being seen a certain way. You mentioned imposter syndrome. Oftentimes I'll work with individuals that feel like there's two things. They don't want to be caught by the people around them in a space that looks as though they don't know what they're doing, or that they don't have all the answers, or they don't have it figured out. And so we hide behind that, and we're not willing to go to that place of collaboration or co-creation. But the other thing that happens in that imposter space is people feel like they don't have a place where they can go say the words, I don't know. And being okay with that. Sometimes we'll compare ourselves to others. I see that as a commonality, where we're looking at where we are today and where somebody else is. And so we start to justify reasons why we might not be able to have that, or why they have it and why we don't. And so we fail to start. Other things show up along the way, but the commonalities for me across all the different people that I've had an opportunity to coach and to work with is we're not good at asking ourselves questions, or sticking with the questions long enough to where we come out the other side with some intentionality and some clarity, and that we're willing to do something about it. I've been speaking recently about the power of questions. If I were to ask somebody, go into a room of entrepreneurs and say, you have the next 2 to 3 minutes to come up with all the ideas that you have around what it would take to move your business to a new level, maybe to grow your business by 5 times. Well, in phrasing that question and putting that in your brain to solve for, you're going to do something about it. You're going to think through that process. You'll write down a bunch of ideas, and those ideas might be great. They might be horrible. But the fact that you asked yourself a question and you spent time with it, we can use that as a tool in our lives. So a great question around, if we're worried about what others might think of us, or we're worried that they might see us in a different light, or see us, we've heard that we fear people seeing us start small. Maybe what we could ask ourselves, instead of making it about us and what others see in us, ask ourselves the question, what do I want others to experience with me? What do I want others to describe their interaction with me as? And so we start to reframe that, and we think about that in a different way. And that's just one little example, but I think that the commonality is there's lack of clarity. Productivity doesn't match the things that are important to them. They're chasing things in a way that are more reactive and less intentional. And so in that space, we just become too busy that we don't stop, ask ourselves a good question, take the time to formulate an answer, and then to make a plan around what we want to do to move towards that plan.
You mentioned quitting on things before you really get going. And I know that a conversation that we had that still sticks with me, and I repeat it to this day, and I think I'll repeat it forever, but you said to me, I challenge you to find the positive in your perceived challenge. Instead of looking at it like, oh, poor me, and this isn't fair, and why did this happen? Oh, I must not be good enough, or I must not be cut out for this. It was, okay, there is a roadblock in my path. What could I learn from it? And that line, finding the positive in my perceived challenge, I will never forget, and has been so powerful in my life, having that perspective on even a really challenging situation. Why do you think that lesson is so powerful to learn and remind ourselves of?
We are built to look for danger. We're built to identify danger quickly and to quickly articulate what risk it might bring to our life. And I love the work of the Arbinger Institute, where they talk about the pyramid of change. And what they identify is that most people spend an enormous amount of their time, a significant amount of their time, focused on the things that aren't working, the things that are broken, the things that are wrong. Very few people spend time on what can I do to create a different result. And so as we look at those two paradigms, and what you brought up was, if we feel like something's happening to us, or we're having a rough patch in our life, or we're challenged with things, asking ourselves, what possibilities exist in this space? Why is this, not just why is this happening to me, but what is it providing me? What's the gift in this season of my life? What is it that I need to learn? And again, it's putting questions in front of you that you actually have to think about and spend some time with. And so if we want to move into a space of solution, and we want to find the gifts in the setbacks that we face, we've got to learn to write better stories. And if our story is focused so much on the things that are broken and not working, we'll follow that story. We'll be the actor and the character in that story so brilliantly, because of the way that our brain works. We actually create this filter to where it filters everything else out besides what we actually just told ourselves what to look for. We reinforce the things that we believe are existing in our life. And so if our focus is on what's wrong, we've got to develop a skill set to where we start to say, okay, this doesn't feel good. I don't like where I'm at, but what is the opportunity? What's the lesson? What might I be missing? What do I know to be true that isn't? And in that moment, in that pause, by asking ourselves a question, we've got to stop, breathe, focus on a new possibility. And if we'll shift from focusing on the things that are wrong or broken, or who's not doing what, and just take personal responsibility. Given the circumstance, given the setback, what's possible for me moving forward? That's where the power of creation comes.
No, I agree so much. And I know it's been so powerful for me, but I want to clarify though, this doesn't mean that everything is sunshine and rainbows. It doesn't mean that you don't have bad days. I think a lot of people look at that of, well, finding the positive in a challenging time. That doesn't mean that you don't feel it and you don't give yourself that space to acknowledge that you're having a rough day or things are hard right now. It's just not getting stuck there. Is that right?
Yeah, you can't remove the challenges that are in your life. I had a conversation with somebody about drama, and they said, well, how do I get rid of the drama from my life? You don't. It's just not possible, because we're built to look for the things that aren't working. We're built to look for the challenges that we face, because that's our protection mechanism. And so there will always be something that comes up for us that's a challenge, that's difficult, that just isn't working. And that's part of that imperfection. It's part of that experience. And I believe the biggest gift for us is in those moments when we have difficult times, what do we have to look forward to on the other side of it? Because we're going to spend some time in it. It might be a long season. It might be something that we're challenged with the rest of our mortal life. So it's a skill set that becomes part of our internal dialogue. It becomes part of our choices. It becomes part of our question set. where just know you're going to have challenges and it's a guarantee of life. But can we add to that as part of a growth opportunity to say, when those times come, can I remind myself, and maybe I'm putting a post on the wall, or I'm getting a tattoo, or I'm putting a reminder on my phone, whatever it is that just reminds us to pause and ask ourselves the question, what might be on the other side of this? What's here for me? What's the gift in this challenge?
Oh, I love that so much. I know it has meant a lot to me, and something that I come back to again and again. Clarity is also something that has popped up a lot in our conversations. It is something we have talked about, and I know you teach on so often. And I can go back to, and I don't even know if you even remember this interaction that we had, but I go all the way back. I mean, it was probably 6 years ago, really one of my first interactions with you. I was on an incentive cruise that I had earned. I was there by myself because my husband was on a special forces deployment in Afghanistan. So here I am in the middle of the ocean on a day at sea on a cruise ship, and you had just finished training a large group of people, and everybody else was going about their day. And there was something about that I just felt called or compelled to walk up to you. And you were so kind and gracious. You didn't know me, but took the time to talk with me. And I know that that moment for me was a lollipop moment. If you haven't watched the Drew Dudley TED Talk, you need to go Google that. It's really, really powerful about the impact we can have on others. But it was such a pivotal moment in my business because it gave me clarity. You didn't take my nonsense. You sat down with me on that rocky cruise ship in the ballroom, and you asked me about my why and about my perfect average day. And like I said, I know it changed the trajectory of my business because it gave me that crystal clear clarity of where I wanted to go. I'd seen some success in my business, felt like I could do more, but I didn't really know how to do it. I didn't know how to get there or what that path looked like. I didn't have a plan. My wheels were just going. But that conversation was so pivotal for me. Why do you think those two questions made such a difference? And why do you recommend, I guess, that people really ask themselves and talk about that concept of really understanding your why and what your perfect average day was? How that gave me so much clarity. I want that for everybody else, but I would love your take on to kind of help other people maybe at home walk through that themselves that don't have the chance to have that conversation with you.
Sure. A lot to unpack there. I want to make sure that we keep that placeholder of clarity because that's what will come out the other side of this. I remember that conversation very well. And it always makes me smile to hear you tell the story and how it impacted you, to know that an impact was had. That always feels good. And that lollipop moment that you described, it's fun to hear that. I remember part of that conversation, though, that you may have left out of the story. Part of that conversation early on was, I did ask you what your why was. I asked you why you were doing this business, and you gave me an answer. And I said, well, that's nice, but that's BS. So let's dive in a little bit deeper. And you're like, wait a minute. It was
uncomfortable. I do remember it. And I glossed over that a little bit because it was really uncomfortable. You had trained on your why, and you hear a lot of people talk about that. And it's talked about a lot because it is so important and it is powerful. And I think I had really glossed over that in all the other opportunities I'd had to write it down on a piece of paper. I was doodling on a paper when you were asking us to do that in the larger setting. But one-on-one, I couldn't get away because I had initiated the conversation and you wouldn't let me get away. And I think it was important to be uncomfortable and really get to the root instead of that glossed over what I thought I was supposed to say.
Yeah. And so it moved from a surface answer that I could feel you weren't convicted to. And I could see it on your face. I could hear it in your voice, your body language. It was just the easy answer. And it was something that you felt like maybe I wanted to hear. It wasn't about me. I didn't care what the answer was. What I cared about is that you were convicted to your own answer. And so as we dove deeper, it was real simple. It was just continuing to ask why. Why do you want to make money? I want to be able to take care of my kids. Why do you want to be able to take care of your kids? Well, I want to be able to provide this and that. Well, why do you want that? And as we kept diving deeper and deeper, we landed in a space that the question came, and maybe it was more of a challenge, and it was a challenge to you to describe for me your perfect average day. I think a lot of times we're chasing these big dreams, and we want the vacation, we want the new car, we want the big house on the hill, we want some perfect life that we're looking for. What we wanted to center in on was, what's the perfect average day for you? And as you described that, in fact, I'm going to let you describe that, because it's your perfect average day. And when you described it to me, you were emotional about it. You were convicted to it. It meant big things for you in your life. It was coming from a place of trying to solve for some fears and some inadequacies and some variableness in your life, to just set out something that was magical. And it wasn't this big, huge thing, but it was what your average day would be like if you could map out your day and just have this in perpetuity. This would be what it is. So I'd like to hear it again from you, because it's yours.
Oh, well, I can remember that, because I think even when we got to that, when you asked me that question, we talked about my why and got a little deeper. And then you just said, explain to me your perfect day. And I kind of, again, went on the surface, and you're like, no, I remember it so vividly, because you said, no, when your eyes open in the morning, what does that look like? Right. And I remember that, because thinking about in that moment, my husband is Army Special Forces veteran now. And at the time I had 2 young kids. He was gone all the time, in harm's way. And I was living in this constant state of fear. And I really believe, if I'm honest with myself, I built my business believing that my husband would not come home from one of those, and I would have to take care of my kids, and everything would be on my shoulders. And I was planning for that inevitable, which is an awful place to be in, and a really scary state of mind to have. But I felt this urgency that I thought someone was going to knock on my door and tell me my husband was not coming home, and that my kids' dad was gone. And so I was building this thing subconsciously, thinking that. And I remember my perfect average day, you told me to open my eyes, and what did I see? And I said, my husband is safe, laying next to me with both of his arms and legs. And then, well, what does it look like from there? Well, we get up before our kids, and we have coffee together, and we get our kids ready for school, and we walk them to the school bus, and all these things that he was missing out on, and I was missing out on, and our kids were missing out on. It painted a picture for me of a life that I could be a part of building, having my husband home, out of harm's way, my kids having their dad, me having my best friend, and us building a life together, whatever came our way, instead of me doing it by myself because he was gone physically, or gone because he had been killed overseas. And so that perfect average day put so much clarity in my mind of, you're right, it's not about a sales goal or selling so much or reaching a tier or a rank. It was about, what did I need to do to make that happen? To give my kids and give myself that perfect average day, that my husband could get my kids off the school bus every day and never miss a baseball game and things like that. Just those basic things that I didn't have in the moment. And it gave me complete focus, laser focus of what I needed to do. And I went home from that experience, from that week away, when I could finally talk to him on a satellite phone. And I'm like, I got a plan. And we started mapping out, it took us a few years, but we started mapping out from that conversation what it would look like for him to retire, what we would need to do, how we could make that happen. And I can say today we are living that dream. We live in our dream location in Montana. We moved. My husband, walks our kids to school every day, never misses a game. He is here driving me crazy, and I love every second of it. But I'm living that perfect day because of the work I did, but I know it would not have happened without that focus. I might have continued spinning my wheels, not realizing that that was possible or working towards that goal.
So you mentioned clarity a handful of times there. When I heard you describe your perfect average day, and going through the detail, just like you described, it became something that lit you up. The possibility of that and what that could feel like. I mean, you could visualize it with great clarity. You could put every detail around it. And so what that did for you at that moment, and it's kind of taking why do I do what I do? Why am I working so hard? Why am I trying to create something bigger in my life? But with the clarity around it, it actually can inform what you do day in and day out. And a deeply rooted why with high clarity becomes the foundation or the anchor or the touch point that you might have to go back to a handful of times as you get so sucked into the weeds of what you're doing, that it's, if I don't have it in my calendar, if I haven't clearly articulated that on a day-to-day basis, that this is why I'm doing what I'm doing today, this is why I'm getting out of bed, this is why I'm showing up and putting in the effort to achieve this, it just doesn't happen. That clarity is so important, because the clarity informs decisions, it informs actions, it actually helps us push through the reactivity, the challenges that we have, because we've gotten clear about that. We've taken the time to do that work. And so it's a big challenge for all of us. How clear are we in the things we're pursuing? How clear are we in what must be done to get to where we want to go? And I would add to this story, because there's more to this story, I guess from my perspective. You took that, you ran with it, you created massive personal success and wins and confidence, and you were trucking all along. And Seth was still deployed. He was in and out of deployment. There was always that risk of still hanging out there for you. And I remember that Seth had come home from deployment. And I may be getting the details of this story incorrect, so correct me if I'm wrong. But I remember having a conversation with you, because I think somebody had reached out saying, hey, Lindsay's just working like crazy. It sounds like Seth's home, and that things might be a little bit funky with that, as far as he's here and she's working and they're not spending as much time together. And it reminded me of this perfect average day. And I called you. And what did I say to you?
You asked me if I remembered my perfect average day, and basically, was I having it? Did I have it now? And I think you can, like I got off that cruise ship and I had this fire in my belly, and I was so motivated, and I was doing all the things to like get him home and make this plan for our family long-term that would have this lasting effect. And I was doing it. And there were so many challenges. I mean, don't get me wrong. But in those moments when I would be faced with a challenge, I could say, my why was deeper. My why was stronger than that challenge. Nothing was more important than getting my husband out of harm's way. No challenge, nothing. But then I got him home, and I was so caught up in that sort of hamster wheel that I forgot that I had exactly what I had been working for. And so I think even that's such a great reminder of, you can work and be so focused and put in all that effort, but you can also not have the clarity when it actually happens to sit there and be present in that moment. So that was such a great lesson, even after achieving what I had wanted to, or that goal of, and even to this day, that I am such a motivated, driven person, it gets in the way sometimes. And I have to be sort of brought back and say, well, now wait a minute, right? What is that perfect average day? What's the goal? Is this serving that goal?
Yeah, very good. And that's what I remember from that conversation, is it was almost a little friendly reminder that, hey, you've been working so hard to have this. It's right in front of you. It's in your lap right now. Why are you not enjoying that?
Because don't miss out on it. It's right there, and you can't see it for the blinders that you have on.
I always share this quote from Chuck Blakeman. It's one of my dear friends. He's a great author. He said this about moments like that. He said, don't let the tyranny of the urgent outweigh the priority of the important. And if we're clear about what's important, we'll figure out ways to make that work, but we'll enjoy it. We'll savor it, because we said it was important. We got clear about it. We defined it. So don't let the tyranny of the urgent outweigh the priority of the important.
Oh, I love that so much. So true. Art, for folks that are maybe starting down this journey, trying to work on personal development, better their mindset, be a better example. For me, I know it's a big piece of, yes, I have personal goals and business goals, but I also want to be a really good example for my kids. I want to teach them how to handle adversity. I think we have a lot of moms and entrepreneurs listening as well. What would be your advice for somebody just starting down that journey? How do you get started? How do you take that first step towards growth, a better mindset on I guess, their journey? Where would they start? Where do you suggest they start? Or tips you can give, I guess?
Where I would start is just take a pause for a moment and decide, do I want to be better tomorrow than I am today? Recognize that as a human being, surrounded by lots of other human beings, we have impact and influence with others. You asked the question a second ago about people that want to be a better influence with their kids. Well, consider that you're already influencing your kids. You already have an impact in their life. They're watching you, they're modeling you, they're paying attention to what you're doing. And I think sometimes we, in our efforts to be focused in something specific, maybe it's in career or with our physical health or in our relationships, that sometimes we forget that people are watching us and they're watching what we're doing, and we're already impacting their life. And so ask yourself the question, what impact do I want to have? What impact might be meaningful for them? And so it's just starting with those questions. Do I want to be better tomorrow than I was today? Do I want to show up big for the people in my life? And if so, what might that need to look like? And sometimes it actually requires that we go have conversations with others where we ask them, what impact am I having in your life? And sometimes those conversations are weird. I remember having it was a super awesome conversation with someone. We'd gone to lunch, and it was a husband and wife and their daughter. And we were at lunch, and we came back to the office, and we were having conversations about business. And one of the things that the mom said is, she said, I feel bad because I'm working all the time. And my kids, I don't get to spend as much time with them as I want to. And her daughter's right there, 15-year-old daughter. And she said, I feel like I'm a bad mom. And she started to go down this road and create this story. And I said, time out. I said, I want to give your daughter an opportunity to share with us, from her perspective, what she's learning from her mom. And when we took the time to go through that, what her daughter was seeing was not the same things. What her daughter was seeing is a mom that works hard, that's committed, that loves and cares for her family, that's dealing with challenges and overcoming challenges, that is someone with strength and perseverance. And if you look at that and you take a minute to step through that, you think, man, what a tremendous example this mother was to her daughter. What an impact she's having. And so be careful again with the stories we tell ourselves. We'll write a story around who we think we are and how we're showing up. So just start with that question. Do I want to grow? What type of impact do I want to have in others' lives? What do I want others to experience with me? And just start there. And if you have some answers to those questions, and it gives you an opportunity or presents a choice to you to do something about it, that's personal growth. That's personal development in how you'll respond to the answers to those questions.
Gosh, that story we tell ourselves and the mom guilt is real. And I know that it's holding so many people back. I can remember early in my business, and I know I had conversations with you about this, but I remember I had women say to me like, well, I would sell what you sell, but I have to be with my kids, or I really love my kids. And I know they didn't mean that as a jab to me. Well, I must not love my children because of the success I had achieved, but it was their issue that they were telling themselves that they couldn't do this thing because of other responsibilities. And I know so much of that was holding them back, was in their head. And I've learned that over time, but in the moment that was hard to kind of wrap my head around. But that's a real conversation that people are, or story that people are telling themselves, that they can't do this or they're not doing good enough.
Yeah, it is. And you bring up a good point. we present these choices to ourselves that if I want to be good at this, I can't be good at this at the same time. Or, we have these imbalances in our life. Anytime we pursue something, we're going to create an imbalance because we put new effort in one area, we reduce effort in another area. So as we're thinking about the things that are important to us in our life, this is another big question. It's how are we prioritizing those areas of our life? So if we say that our family is important and that I want to have good relationships with my kids, are we willing to raise the level of necessity around the priorities relative to having that be an important part of our life? Because when we say we want it, wants don't always translate into actions. And when it's necessity, when it's absolute priority, when it's do or die, we respond to that. We'll move mountains to make those things happy. If my kids were hungry and going without food, my priorities and my level of necessity around finding food to feed to them so that they would survive would supersede everything. And so that raised level of necessity that enters my life, just decide the things that are important to you and make sure that how you're living your life is aligned and congruent with what you say is important. And so you can have both. You can have great relationships with your children. You can have a thriving business. You can be physically fit. You can have your finances in order. You can have fun, but you got to make it intentional. And you got to honor each of those in their own respective way, which means now you've got to get really good at time management. It means you got to get good at being present. You got to stop multitasking. You got to give yourself to each of these things. And does it mean I might have to get up earlier? Yeah, you might have to get up earlier. But again, what's the raised level of necessity around that? And if it's important, you'll find a way to make it happen. If it's not important, or it's just a want or a desire, raise the level of necessity and you'll figure it out.
You talked about time management, and I know that that's something that the majority of us struggle with, especially those trying to juggle motherhood and business. It's something that I talk with my team about and other entrepreneurs all the time. A huge lesson that you taught me, and I think it goes along with that, prioritizing things that are important and being intentional about your time and making that time for it, is that that's also a lie we're telling ourselves, that we don't have enough time. But those decoy strategies that pop up, you call me on it a lot, and I'm grateful for it, but I'm guilty of it just as much as anybody else in this day of cell phones and instant gratification. And, I have to check this thing real quick. We get sucked into that, whether it's, scrolling social media or online shopping, whatever that looks like, eating up our time, which then makes us feel like we don't have time to do the other things that we want, or adds more stress or drama into our life. But we're actually causing that. And I know I catch myself doing it now because you brought that idea to my attention. So decoy strategies and that time management, and the story we tell ourselves that we don't have time when really we do. Because dang it, I swallowed that tough pill in one of our conversations, and I'm grateful for it.
Yeah, usually when we say I don't have time, it's because I'm not willing to make time. And I'm not choosing time for that. So when you talk about decoy strategies and time management, there's a few things in play here. A lot of times we procrastinate the things that we're a little bit uncertain about, or that we're a little bit afraid of, or that tend to be more difficult for us. And so I had this conversation with a dear friend probably 6-7 years ago. We were having this conversation about procrastination. And maybe I have a business proposal that I've got to write, or I've got somebody that I need to get on the phone with, or certain tasks that I know I need to get done. But I always could find time to go down to the bike shop and talk with the guys at the bike shop and have fun there. I could find time to go grab lunch and hang out a little bit longer. I could find time to get on social, or I could find time to read an article, or go for a drive, or pick up the phone and call a friend. There's always something that is easier. It's more fun. It's not the thing that is giving us a little bit of stress and contention. So we coined this phrase in our conversation. We were actually procrastinating when we're having this conversation, but we coined the phrase decoy strategies. And the meaning behind that is we will go to great lengths to do everything and anything besides what must actually be done.
Oh,
And
so true.
we think that being busy is going to create productivity or effectiveness or results in our life. And so oftentimes we use that I'm busy as a badge of honor. No, when you say you're busy, it's usually an acknowledgement that you're not using your time wisely. And so some of the things when it comes to managing our time more effectively, one of the helpful tools, there's a law called Parkinson's law, and it has to do with compressing time to create a higher level of urgency around what must be done. And so if I have a goal and I say, but by the end of the month, I want to have 5 new customers. Well, if it's the first of the month and I don't have a high level of necessity, I just have a desire and that's what I've set out there, I'm probably not going to work. If it's important enough that I hit that goal and I don't want to be embarrassed or I don't want to let myself down, I might work on that closer to the end of the month. But between now and then, it's probably not going to have a high level of urgency. And so did it find a place on my calendar today? Did it find a place on my calendar at the very start of my day when I have a clear spot in my schedule? Did it find significance in my life so that today it's important? And so that Parkinson's law would say, I need to find 1 new customer by noon today, and it's 11 o'clock. What happens is we get super focused. And so use little tools like that. Use block time. If you want to have better relationships with your children, you want to have better relationships with your customers, guess what? Multitasking doesn't help with that. So if my kids come home from school and I've got my phone out and I'm cruising social or I'm having conversations with clients, I'm responding to emails, I'm texting back and forth, I'm not present for either one of them. In fact, I'm very ineffective in the very thing that I said I wanted to be effective with. So you got to be willing to draw some boundaries. And again, your calendar can be one of the things that can help you with this. I remember sharing with you, Lindsay, that if it's important to you and I can't find it on your calendar, then it's not important to you. And if you're not willing to protect the time, protect that space for that thing, if being with your kids and being present with them is important, then there better be a few spots on your calendar that day where nothing else interferes with that. Protect your calendar fiercely. So there are some things that we can do. Again, if personal growth is important to us, and we say we want something, we better find a way to make it an urgency and be doing something every day to get to that place.
Friend, I am so grateful for you. I cherish the time that you are so generous to give to me and all of the lessons that I've learned. I know folks listening today are going to have some great takeaways. What is, or how can they follow you on social? You're so great about being so generous about the knowledge that you have and the nuggets that you're learning too on your personal growth journey. Where's the best place for them to follow you?
Sure. You can connect with me any place on social, Facebook, Art McCracken, Instagram. My handle there is honor.the.gift. I'm on LinkedIn, Art McCracken as well. Website, www.choiceisthegift.com. Reach out if you ever have any questions or anything that comes to your mind, something that you're learning and growing and developing from. Love to hear from you. But this personal growth and development is certainly a passion of mine, but more than anything, it's just back to my calling, is that people experience living true.
Well, friend, before I let you go today, I got to ask you one question that I ask everybody at the end of the show here on the Love Lindsay podcast. You have an incredible wife. You've raised 3 awesome kids. Knowing what you know now about personal growth and your journey, what would you tell your 16-year-old self now that you didn't know then?
Live true. Be honest with others. Don't be afraid of who you are. Be willing to live true and let all of those insecurities and apprehensions and worries just go. You don't need to carry them. That would be my advice.
Thank you, friend, so much. And thank you, everybody, for listening today. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it on social media, tag us, let us know your biggest takeaways, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on the next Love Lindsay podcast. Have a great day, friends.